welcome to Clearing the Haze podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Marting. And today my guest is Bill Current. And I felt it was important to have Bill on. We wanted to talk about, he was one of the nominees from the last voting to go onto the board because they have two separate terms that are on that board. One side of the board is on for a 2-year term, and then the other side of the board is on a 3-year term. And so it kind of alternates. That way, you always have some senior members that are on there, people that are pretty well informed on what's going on, so that we have that ability to continue to grow and build on that. And so I wanted to have Bill on so we could talk a little bit about the process and how that's turned out. And with him being on the board for a year, I thought it would be interesting to hear his perspective of being a new board member and how that's gone for him. So, Bill, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Chuck. Pleasure to be on. I was on last year around this time
Yep.
when you were so kind to do an episode with me so I could tell the NDASA membership why I felt like I deserved their vote. And I think it was really helpful. So I'm grateful to come back again a year later and tell the folks what it's been like.
Great. I can't wait to hear your perspective and what you've experienced in this last year.
Well, I'll start out by saying that it has been an honor to be on the NDASA board. I I had I had been sort of not involved in the formation of NDASA. I think I would have been if it had been possible to do that at the time. Uh, but I am, and let me preface what I'm about to say by sharing that years and years ago, I was a consultant to SAPA when SAPA just got started, when they held their first meeting ever in Baltimore. I went to Baltimore and met Mac Allen and Gary Glisson and some of the other people who were chief key people in bringing that organization into existence, and I served as a consultant to them for a few years. Um, and then some years later, for a very short period of time, I was a consultant to DASA when DASA got started. And and before all of this, I'd been the executive director of the American Council for Drug Education, the director of the Institute for a Drug-Free Workplace, and I knew what that was like. I knew what it was like to start an association, to run it, to manage it, to do the fundraising and all of that. And then I worked with SAPA and DASA in the early days, more SAPA than DASA. And so I knew that this was a huge undertaking that these folks were doing. And I've been incredibly impressed with how far NDASA has come in such a short period of time. I told myself years ago, Chuck, in my career, because I run a company, Current Consulting Group,
Mhm.
it takes all my time every day. It's a busy thing, right?
Yeah.
And um, and I told myself years ago I would help in any way I could with SAPA and DASA, but I just can't be on the board of directors. I can't run for that because I just don't have the time. And a year ago, I called Joe McGuire, who's the executive director of NDASA, and I said, Joe, I'm thinking of running for the board of directors. Is this nuts? Is this crazy? And she said, no, not at all. Throw your hat in the ring. Let's see what happens. I think you got a shot. But the reason I did it was I have been so impressed with NDASA and what they're doing with the leadership, with Jim Greer and some of the other early leaders of the organization, yourself included. And being on the board of directors this last year has just been an honor. It's been so impressive to see the level of commitment and the hard work and sacrifice that the board members make to further the mission and the vision of NDASA and to be a part of it. I don't know exactly how this happened, but I'm the chairman of the membership committee.
There you go.
I was a member of the ad hoc bylaws committee. That's now finished. And um, and then a great honor, Jim Greer asked me if I would be one of the initial members of the board of the foundation that NDASA has created. And that's really fun. That's more down my alley in some ways because of my experience with the American Council for Drug Education. I guess I made a long response to your question, but I'm loving it. I love the organization. I love what we're doing. It's not easy to be on the board, but I'm really enjoying it.
It's funny because as I've been doing these interviews with those that are serving now and those that are wanting to serve, um, everybody has their own skill set, something that they specifically can bring to the table that makes the leadership of Vendasa pretty unique, in my opinion. Being one of the founders of this organization and to see the goals that we had set, your 2 years, your 3 years, your 5 year goals, and see that we've achieved almost all of those. There's very few that are really left, but they're still setting those goals and those objectives of what they're wanting to achieve. And I think a lot of that comes into personal character and commitment and your knowledge of the industry and wanting to share that. Can you speak on that a little bit and what your feelings are on that?
Yeah, I think that the makeup of the board of directors is critical. The success of the organization overall, I think, depends largely in who's serving on that board of directors. It's kind of interesting because we everybody who's on the board now, we all come from diverse backgrounds, business experiences, etc. And I've been amazed at how well we all get along in those meetings.
Mhm.
And somebody will suggest something, and I'll think to myself, well, I didn't even think of that, or I'll offer an opinion and wait for somebody in the room to shoot it down. But there's such a willingness to listen and to consider new ideas and whatnot. So the makeup of that group is really important in terms of the success of NDASA as a whole. And so I think as we look at this election that's coming up, it starts on the 11th, that it's really important that NDASA members vote. For one thing, I encourage all members to vote, but really consider carefully who you vote for. Now, I'm not saying that there are, a whole bunch of clunkers running for the board of directors. That's not the case. I mean, I've decided who I'm voting for. There's some people maybe I wouldn't vote for. I don't think they're ready. I don't think that they'll make that kind of a commitment at this time. Just my opinion, right? I won't name names or anything like that. But the people I have penciled in for my votes are all just really great. I know some of them have never been on the board before. They're going to come in, they're going to bring some enthusiasm, some new ideas, and I think it's going to make the board better. Now, if people are listening to this, I wrote an open letter to NDASA members that we posted on LinkedIn today, and you can go and read, sort of my opinion on what to look for in a board member that you'll vote for. I'm going to give a plug to a couple of people right now, though. Mark Maxim, for example, is the chairman-elect, and he's got to be reelected to the board in order for his term as chairman-elect to actually happen. And Chuck, I would put you and Mark and a few other people in this top echelon of devoted board members who have really inspired me and made me want to work hard in this position that I have on the board. So I would encourage people to vote for Mark, to reelect him to the board, and to give him the opportunity to be the chairman starting this April at the next NDASA conference. Jim Greer's done an amazing job, but it's time for new leadership. That's how this works, and Jim endorses that completely. And Mark won by election of the board to become chairman-elect, and so I'd like to see Mark get the opportunity to do that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Scott Haley is also running for reelection. Scott's with Abbott, East Green, that whole family there. And I've known Scott for many, many years, and he comes to those board meetings with ideas. And now help me out because I'm still, even a year later, sort of learning the nomenclature. But is he like the vice chairman? Is that his?
He's the sitting vice chair right now.
Yeah. And so in my mind, I would have thought the vice chair becomes the chair, right? But we have a chairman elect. But Scott's done a great job. And there's some other people running for reelection. Maybe Jan Corman. Is she running for reelection?
She ran the same time you did this last time.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Colleen Weinhoff, right?
Colleen, yeah, she's going to be on the show.
Yeah. And she's just fantastic in those meetings. I don't want to give away all my votes, but there's three of them right there, that I just have full confidence in. There's a few others that I'm absolutely certain are going to make great board members. I'm going to vote for them. Maybe there's one or two people that I wouldn't vote for out of the whole group, but most of the people, if it's any of the others, I think we're going to be in really good shape. And if it's the seven that I'm voting for, I get to vote for seven, right, Chuck?
That's right.
I hope so.
That's right. We've got
But it,
14 candidates and we have seven open spots.
okay, so the ones I'm voting for absolutely are ringers. They're going to just, but I don't want to put you on the spot, Chuck, because I was really disappointed when you announced that you weren't going to run for reelection. But it's hard to replace people like you in a board like that because you've got the
Thank you.
historical knowledge. Oh, you deserve it. You've got the historical knowledge. You're extremely generous within our industry. You do so many good things for other people. You're generous with your timing, your expertise, and that really brought a lot to the board. And
Thank
so
you.
replacing you is a delicate balancing thing. And so as people look at who they're going to vote for, I would say look for people like Chuck who are going to make the sacrifices that are necessary, who are going to be generous with their time. And also I would say, and this applies to you as well, look for people who have a track record of being that way in our industry, who have shown kindness and a generosity towards others in the industry. That's one of the, I mentioned Mark Maxim. I don't know of anybody that worked harder than Mark does. And the only problem I have with Mark is that he was the chairman of the membership committee, and then he became the chair elect, and I by de facto stepped into his spot. So because he was just doing, he had too much to do. But that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, Mark will still be on the board, of course, as the chairman, but those sort of the working hands people, that run committees and come up with ideas and get assignments and run with them. That's what we're looking for. And not everybody can do that. It's just not, in everybody's makeup. And so without, and I would never criticize anybody by name or anything like that. I just not my thing,
Yeah.
but there's some people I'm absolutely certain if they're elected to the board, they're gonna really make us proud. And so I'm looking forward to that.
And I agree with you, and thank you for your kind words. One of the things I think is unique about NDASA is when we first started putting this together, we had put term limits for those positions that we have, and I would have been able to run one more time, but I'll tell you, 6 years is a long time,
Yeah.
and I've been doing it since the beginning, and I just felt that it was time to allow other people to have that same opportunity that we're talking about. We have so many good people, and I think I may have mentioned this to you. It's kind of like when you go and you voted for the president, and you knew the first two that were on the list because we've seen them in the media so much, but there were seven other people on there. I didn't
Yeah.
know any of them. And the whole thing is, maybe one of them would have been the best vote out of all of them, but we'll never know because that opportunity for them to come out and express themselves and to let us know who they are, we it just wasn't there. And so
Yeah.
that's part of what this is to allow people to make that decision. And I think that when we have individuals such as yourself that are able to go out there to the membership and say, hey, look, these are individuals, this is what they bring to the table. These are the people that I would consider. That means a lot too, and
Well, and let me add something to that, Chuck, which is because I've been doing this for a long time, 35 years, 36 years. I'm going on. That's how long it's been. I can't even say the number, right? But I've been doing it a long time. Like I said, I've got some background with SAP. I love the SAP organization.
yeah.
Um, Dacia, they went under, I think maybe, who knows, I don't want to comment on that. Um, but my point here is that as an industry, we're facing some really critical issues right now that are going to have an impact on our future viability as an industry and the
Exactly.
quality of the services that we provide. For example, those DOT oral fluid regulations, we still can't use them, and so that's got to make faster progress because I think as an industry, especially given the legalization of marijuana, oral fluid testing is critical to our future as an industry. And I'd like to see the federal government. I know this will probably never happen, but I'd like them to look at rapid testing technology. If a product is FDA cleared and there's certain guidelines in place for how collections take place, how results get reported, maybe it's through a reader system, like with oral fluid, you've got it from your biotech, or with urine, you've got with eScreen and others that are out there, then I think there's safeguards in place that make, rapid oral fluid testing for that screen a viable option for the future of our industry. The biggest issue that concerns me, though, going forward as an industry, and this is something NDASA is very active on. As you know, last week was our advocacy day in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, I had the flu, so I couldn't travel and be a part of that. But the whole legalization of marijuana movement and the possibility that marijuana itself might get reclassified as a Schedule 3 controlled substance from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, I think it just opens up a whole lot of really potentially negative possibilities,
Mm.
right? So we're working really hard as an organization on something we call the safety carve out, which if that did happen, that the federal government, DOT regulations that require testing for marijuana for truck drivers and airline pilots, et cetera, would continue to be legal through this safety carve out. I think that's critical. I think opposing the safety carve out is, in my mind, anti drug testing. Because if you don't have that, the DOT regulations lose their teeth. So as you're looking at, sort of the big picture, I'm looking for candidates to the board, for example, that support the safety carve out. That's non-negotiable. And I'm also looking for people who understand that even though marijuana may be legal in some states, it doesn't make it safe to use. So legal use doesn't mean legal impairment on the job. And we know from a number of surveys that have come out in just the last couple of years that a significant percentage of people, I think it's 36%, I apologize if I'm getting that number wrong, but 36% of marijuana users admitted that they use marijuana either on the job or some percentage close to that, 28%, while they're commuting to work. And so you've got people who live in states where marijuana is legal and perhaps where the state law has made drug testing a little bit more complicated, although it doesn't prohibit it, like in California and Washington, you can still test for marijuana, just not with lab-based urine, well, without urine testing, right?
Mm.
You use oral fluid testing. But I'm concerned that the legalization of marijuana has perhaps convinced some people in our industry that they shouldn't encourage their clients to test for marijuana, that it's too complicated or there are too many legal loopholes that they can get caught up in. I disagree with that. I disagree with the whole legalization movement because I think marijuana is the most harmful illicit drug because so many people use marijuana. I'll tell you a quick story, Chuck. Here in Florida, where I live, it's very common for people to come to your door to offer to trim the palm trees in your yard, right? Well, I'm not going up on one of those big ladders to trim those palm fronds. Not, I couldn't do it, you know.
I wouldn't
So
do
yeah, but I'm looking for a guy who's got a, what do you call it, a wood chipper or whatever, who's going to
it. A
grind all
shanty
that
or
stuff up
whatever. Yeah.
and carry it away, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't want that stuff sitting on my yard for a week until the trash guy comes. So a guy came to my door, sounded reputable, looked reputable, et cetera, et cetera. I said, yeah, come back tomorrow morning. You and your crew can come and trim all the trees on my property. I've got a lot of trees. He comes back the next morning. I open the door and I'm blown away by the smell of marijuana. I mean, it's just so powerful when I opened the door. And I said to the guy, I can't let you and your crew go up on these tall ladders on my property to
Hmm.
trim these branches when you've been smoking marijuana on your way in the truck on your way to my house. I said I can't take on that liability, and I think this is part of the problem. And so if you're on the sort of pro marijuana side of the issue, if you're taking money from the legalization folks in any capacity, I think it's anti-drug testing. I think it's anti what we stand for as an organization. Now, I'm not saying anybody does that. I would shudder to think that anybody in our industry does that.
Yeah.
But that would be a deal breaker for me. I couldn't consider voting for somebody who is against that safety carve out, if there is anybody in our industry like that, or who generally supports the legalization of marijuana or encourages employers not to test for marijuana when the problem is so prevalent, is so pervasive, and the consequences are so negative.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that there's a line that needs to be drawn when it comes to that. Um, you know, I I don't know too many people medically. I'm not absolutely sure that it even does anything medically. But if those individuals are wanting to do it medically, God bless them if that works for them. But those aren't the individuals that I'm looking at that are going into the workplaces or getting into their car and driving, things like that. It's been advertised like alcohol is and saying that it's safer. And for most people that you talk to, they've interpreted that as it means it's safer for them to be able to drive and to be able to do all these other things and go to work. And I think that's where the oral fluid with the shorter detection time, being able to narrow it down to as close as we can to that impairment window that somebody would be experiencing from recent use is very vital. And that's what the employers are screaming for. And I do believe, like you're saying, if we're trying to teach our teams and our TPAs and all these individuals that are going out to test, they have to be able to convey that to these clients. And if you're giving them a mixed message by, you know, telling them that they have to test for it, but yet you're advocating something totally different, then there's a problem there.
Yeah,
And
and the current consulting group, we don't do drug testing. We're not selling a drug test, MRO services, collections. That's not our thing. We're consultants. We write policies, we track the laws, regulations, etc.
yeah,
If a company came to me and asked me, what should we do about marijuana? I'll educate them. I'll let them know what the law in their state says. I'll let them know what their options are for dealing with marijuana. And I'll also let them know what the potential consequences are if you decide not to test for marijuana. There was an interesting report that came out from First Advantage just a few years ago where they compared the positivity rate for post accident tests with companies that had discontinued pre employment testing for marijuana. And that positivity rate had gone up significantly for post accident positives among the companies that had dropped marijuana from their pre employment test or had dropped, maybe they dropped pre employment testing altogether. I think pre employment testing is critical now, perhaps more important than ever. If you're an employer and you decide, you know what, this is a little too risky for me to test for my applicants for marijuana. I'm going to lose people that I got to fill positions, et cetera. I'm going to stop testing applicants for marijuana. Okay. That means two things are going to happen. One, you're going to hire more marijuana users for sure. And you're going to see more accidents in the workplace where people test positive for marijuana. We know those two things are true. That's just undeniable. But if somebody you hire without doing a pre employment test that includes marijuana is driving a delivery van for your company. And that day at work, he's among the 28% or whatever that smoke dope on their way to the workplace. And when they get there, they're under the influence to some degree. You hand them the keys to the delivery van and you give them the route for the day, and they go out and well under the influence, they cause an accident that causes harm or property damage or, heaven forbid, a fatality. You, the employer, are on the hook for that liability. You're responsible for it.
well, and I think to add to that, Bill, that people don't recognize that I've been trying to strongly advocate is that you have to be aware of what individuals will use because we have people that will substitute and adulterate their specimens to avoid detection so they continue that behavior and still get a job. We had a couple people today in our office. I was involved with one of them that came in and gave us synthetic urine. And look, we've been in Colorado for 2 decades. I've been doing this longer than that. So just looking at it, we can tell right away. My team has been trained by me. They know this stuff very well, and that's a reason why a lot of our clients do come to us is because they know if they come to us that, I'm not going to tell you that we're going to catch every single person, but we're pretty dang good at what we do. And that's what they're relying on. Um, and this individual came in, and when I talked to her and I explained to her why we knew that it was synthetic and asked her what it was she was worried about, she said, "Well, I smoke weed, but I need another job." And so they'll go to that extent, knowing that that the employer is not going to accept it, but think it's okay to cheat on their test in order to get that job. And it's like I've told a lot of our employers, if they're going to lie to you about that, something as simple as a drug test, what else are they going to be willing to lie about when you have them in the workplace? That
Yeah,
machine got broke. Did you do it? No, it wasn't me. It was somebody else. Is that the type of element that you want in your workplace if they are going to think that that's okay to do.
Yeah, and I don't think, I'm not sure anybody knows more about drug test cheating than you do, Chuck. Not because you're a cheater, but you've dealt with a lot of cheaters. But some of the stories you've told that I've heard you tell over the years are just astonishing.
Yep.
And that's part of what we're up against right now, is that not only are more people using drugs, maybe using drugs on the way to work, or maybe getting high while they're at work, but they've got all kinds of ways to subvert the drug test process. And I think that's one of the advantages of oral fluid testing. I realize there are probably ways to subvert that as well. But there's a whole cottage industry out there for cheating on a urine test. And, you're sort of like the opposition to the opposition, I guess. Probably nobody knows more about how to thwart those efforts than you do.
Well, it's interesting because we had a scientist that you and I both know that was talking to me in my discussions with him. He goes, I could probably come up with something that would pass, but I don't know if it would pass if you were there. And that's something that, and one of the things I've told people is you just have to do the procedures and follow the rules, but you've been very generous with your time, Bill, and I think that a lot of people need to understand the inner workings of that working on the board. And I haven't read what you emailed out yet, but would you mind just kind of synopsizing or just hitting some highlights from that email that you shared? Because I think it's important for people as they go into their voting over the next few days to be able to take those considerations into their minds and be able to help them in making their decisions as to who they feel would be the best candidates to be on the
Absolutely, Chuck.
board.
Thank you for asking me. The first paragraph, I just say what an honor it's been to serve on the board. I'm looking forward to the next 2 years of my 3-year term, and I can't imagine a reason why I wouldn't run again in 2 years if God willing. And then the second paragraph is where I sort of lay out what I think are the qualifications. So this is what I wrote. We're about to start our annual elections for open seats on the board. I am truly impressed with the expertise and dedication of most of the candidates who have thrown their hats into the ring. As well, there are some I don't know, but assume are great also. So I didn't want to leave anybody out, but some of these people I really know well, and they've been heroes of mine. First, let me encourage all NDASA members to vote. Second, as NDASA members cast their votes, I encourage you to single out the people who are known for selflessly serving the organization over the years as volunteer committee members who attend the conferences, who take advantage of the many services we offer, who truly believe in NDASA's mission, and who have proven themselves to be hardworking and honest representatives of the industry. The makeup of the board is critical to NDASA's ongoing success. After some serious consideration, I've decided for whom I will vote, and I think the NDASA board will be stronger than ever. The future is very bright for the drug testing industry. And I think those things I articulated there are really important. But I would probably say people who are known for supporting NDASA and its mission and its vision. I think those are the people who, for me, of the 7 that I've chosen, they all meet that qualification.
Well, it's kind of like on my other podcasts I have, the language of leadership, I often teach that success leaves clues, that you're able to follow the background of individual leaders and to be able to do that checks and balances, to be able to determine whether you have a leader that's going to be a good leader, or if you have somebody that's not meeting those qualifications. And I think that's vital. I think it's really, truly something that needs to be looked at. Look, this being on this board isn't something that's taken lightly, because it is representing the membership as a whole. I mean, I'm sure you've had phone calls and emails since being on the board from members that are concerned about one thing or another because they trust you in bringing forward their concerns. And a lot of those concerns that members have given us, I never even thought about. But once they brought it to light, we're going, yeah, that does make some sense. And then we had to look at it and address it. And I think that's what you need is people that are going to be able to sift through those things for the betterment of our industry. If we allow, like what you're talking about earlier with the legalization of marijuana, if we're going to not be involved with that, there's a lot of us that aren't going to be in business if they reschedule this because that's
Yeah,
going to really affect testing big time, especially with the DOT modes. And I think a lot of individuals haven't really stopped to think about that because we're so used to just going, it's DOT. They're not going to do that. They could. They could, and it could change your business overnight. And then what's going to happen? You're going to have those individuals that weren't expecting something from happening. It just happened. Now we got to explain to our employers who have no clue a lot of times that this stuff is even up, or else they would vote themselves if they knew about it. But that's, I think, how the opposition wants things. They want people to be in the dark so they can pass these things.
yeah, and the other thing that comes to mind, and I love your leadership podcast, by the way. I've been offended a little bit that you've never asked me to do it, but that's okay,
We'll
Chuck.
get
Maybe.
you on.
No, I'm kidding. You can cut that part out of
No, we'll get you on.
the. The thing I was going to add though is that there's that old saying in on these the murder mysteries and the mafia shows or whatever, follow the money,
Yeah,
follow the money.
all the money.
And the pro marijuana people, they've got lots and lots of money. They throw it around. They people sell their souls and I think that the day will come when you look back on your life and your career and your life's work and you'll think, man, what do I have to show for it? I helped a whole lot more people use marijuana legally, and that was my mark on the world. I just think that would be shameful.
Yeah, and it goes totally against what we're fighting for and what we're trying to do is representing those individuals that really don't know until it happens. So that's my hope too, is that we're able to make that difference. And I can tell you, having been part of the governmental affairs committee and having gone to Washington, D.C., it's been enlightening talking to leaders in our nation's capital to be able to explain to them the importance of these things. And then their reactions to that once they understood that has been very very welcoming. And DASA has made a mark and people expect us and they know that we're going to be coming. And I think one of the members that went this last time told me that one of the things that they experienced was more of a warm welcome from people because they knew who we are and what we're doing. And that's what we need. We need that voice and that determination. We need people that are going to be committed to be able to do that. So Bill, and any parting words before we end this podcast today?
Well, I'm going to say this to everybody who has gotten to the end of this podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you're an NDASA member, I just want you to know that when we hold these board meetings, we're literally thinking of you and what's best for you and your business and the things you're trying to accomplish. That's always at the forefront of the leadership of NDASA. I've seen it from Jim Greer to every member of the board. Um, for if you're not an NDASA member and you're thinking of joining, it would be, I say it in my thing here, it will be one of the best investments you'll ever make in your career. So join NDASA, stay engaged in NDASA, help NDASA be everything that it needs to be to help make the drug testing industry a long-lasting, viable way for us to help society and to help to assist people who need help.
Well, Bill, thank you. I'm going to miss not being on the board with you because you're a wealth of wisdom and a person that I admire as well. So I think that we're in good hands. But until next time, I'd love to have you back on the podcast, and I'll definitely invite you over to the Language of Leadership. So thanks for your time, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Chuck, and thanks everybody.